This is my response to paper number 3. Okay, paper number 3. It's a good paper. I liked how the student uses personal anecdotes. Okay. The first half of the paper is about the student's past experience, personal anecdotes, and in the first part, the student uses 3 examples to explain that the student has been, from the student's childhood, the student has been destined for studying communication. Okay, so the first case, the first example, first story is the student's interaction with Hmong students. How the student was really getting along with Hmong students, while other students were frustrated and irritated by the fact that Hmong students didn't speak English well. And the second example, the second anecdote, is the student befriending a blind student, Kia. Okay. And the third example is how how the student's high school teacher or 4th grade teacher evaluated a student by saying that the student has a strong desire to help others. Okay, so these are the three examples, 3 cases in the first half of the paper. And then in the second half of the paper, the student tries to link the stories in the first half of the paper to what the student is going through in the Department of Communication in terms of career goals. Okay. So in the second half of the paper, the student kind of describes what kind of things that you can learn in the Department of Communication. For instance, film studies, interpersonal communication, media policy, intercultural communication, media ethics, communication theory, gender studies, or mass media effects, and other things. What's kind of shaky is how unclear these 3 examples are to communication. So for instance, in the first example where the student talks about his or her interaction with Hmong students, I think ultimately the student wants to highlight the intercultural communication aspect in that example, but the student does not specifically say so. And then in the second example, the example of the students befriending a blind student, to me it's not clear how befriending a blind student is related to communication. Perhaps the student wants to talk about or link it to, I don't know, nonverbal communication, or the aspect that sometimes we take it for granted, okay, the visual communication for granted. And in the third example, the case of the student's teacher, 4th grade teacher, writing about the student's strong desire to help others. To me, it's not clear how that's related to communication. Maybe the student wants to say something about social justice aspect of communication, but in the second example and then in the third example, the student doesn't make it clear how they're related to communication. I'm just assuming that, something about visual communication, something about social justice and communication, but the student is not specifically mentioning these two, so the audiences or the readers are kind of like left with no choice but to just assume. So the paper would be stronger if the student makes that connections, or if the student clarifies how these anecdotes, the personal stories, are related to communication. Other than that, it's a good paper. One last comment is to include page numbers. Okay, I wrote the page numbers on behalf of the student, and another is to write in a title. Okay, for now the paper does not have a title. It just says personal reflection essay. That's not a title. That's the name of the assignment. That's not the title. Alright, that's all for now, and thank you for giving me a chance to read your paper.